How has being a business owner changed your perspective on managing your personal finances?
Well, I think when you work for a company and you get, a paycheck every month and you have certain things covered, your health insurance, and there's just kind of a level of, to a certain extent, transparency and predictability, monotony, which I would say is not bad. I quite miss that sometimes. You have a very strong sense of, how much, if you're realistic about it, what you can afford, what's within your means. The size of apartment that you want, the amount of vacations you take a year, how much you spend going out to restaurants, all that stuff. You have a sense of that. When you have your own business, and this really does vary from business to business, especially for the first few years, really there's great discrepancies. There's, my business is very seasonal, for instance. So there's certain times, because it's event and destination based, that people tend to, around the holidays, right before the holidays, really want to meet someone and want that connection. So, that's a time that we're really busy and that we've got new members joining, we're doing more things. So with not only is the business seasonal, so the amount of cash that we bring in just kind of changes, but, based on what happens with the company, with mine, we have a great piece of press and all of a sudden there's so much interest and we've got all these new members joining. So it's a little bit less predictable, but as the business grows and you gain more experience, I now know there's going to be certain months of the year that I'm not going to make as much money, and it's never perfect, but you do have more of a sense of, cash flow. Mm-hmm. But because there isn't the predictability, I think you have to be much more careful to pick and choose what you prioritize and what you spend your money on. And there's definitely been times that I've been terrified because I've got, my rent is due in 2 days, and I'm like, am I going to pull this out of like a magic hat? What is going to happen? And as terrible as that situation is, and stressful, and just it gives me heart palpitation to think of that. It just forces you. You've got no choice. I'm not going to live in a cardboard box. I'm an adult. I've worked really hard. I'm not going to move back with my parents. So it forces you. It's forced me to find ways to succeed, to make my business succeed. And in an ideal world, as the years go on, and the more experience you gain, and the more your company's established, you figure out ways that you have to, less and less you have to deal with that kind of situation. You know what I mean? Because not only do you kind of know the cash flow, but you strive to have that sustainability. You strive to be your own corporation. You know what I mean? You're cutting the checks. So it's made me very frugal in many ways, but I'm a girl with expensive taste. I like my champagne.
That's right.
So I've had to figure ways and made compromises that you can't, I have not been able to have everything, but I'm working towards, hopefully, being able to have that. But in the meantime, you just have to prioritize what's important, what you're going to spend your money on, and just come to terms with the fact that it's having your own business, especially in the early days. Most people take this risk ultimately, big risk, big reward, because the ultimate payout and the benefits and pleasure you'll get out of your business are so much more than, that's what all of us entrepreneurs hope, than when you're working in the corporate world. But it is a big risk, and it might not be that way. So I just kind of try to own the fact that this is the life I chose, and not get too stressed out, and not have a pity party for myself when I'm not making as much money as I have. But it's the life I chose, and it's been really extraordinary.